If your art isn't selling as you'd hope, I want you to know that it's not that you're not talented enough or dedicated enough or putting in the hours, and it's certainly not because your work isn't good enough. The main reason why sales aren't happening is that most artists are relying on chance to sell their work. So they're putting their work out there and hoping that someone stumbles upon it and decides to buy. But hope alone isn't a strategy. It's typically not the art that's ever the issue. It's how it's being presented and whether or not you're creating the right conditions for people to actually say yes to buying it. And that's what we're talking about in today's video, the real reasons why great artwork doesn't sell and the shifts that you can make to change that. Now, for more videos and all things related to art business, be sure to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell to get notified every time I release a new video. And if you're new here, hello, I'm Martha, and I spent over a decade working in the contemporary art world, starting out in galleries in London and eventually becoming a gallery director. I now run a program called the Artist Accelerator. Inside the program, I've helped artists transform what's possible for them, selling pieces at price that they never thought were possible, securing top magazine features, and creating reliable income streams that give them more freedom in the studio and in their lives. If you're serious about building a sustainable art business, I am hosting a free advanced training on the 7th of May 2026, where I'll share in detail the steps that I teach inside of the Artist Accelerator, along with practical ways to create reliable and sustainable income streams without sacrificing your creativity, integrity, or precious time in the studio. If you would like to join me, all you need to do is click the link in the description below to apply to get your invite. All right, so let's get into the first reason why your artwork may not be selling. You don't have an email list or a real audience yet. Or if you do, you're not actually communicating with them consistently. So maybe you have a few hundred followers on Instagram, but do you really know who those people are? Have you ever had a genuine conversation with them? Social media are platforms that you don't own and you cannot control. And the algorithm decides who sees what. And the reality is that most of your followers don't actually ever see your posts. Your email list, on the other hand, is different. So that's your own pool of potential buyers. People who've put their hand up and actually said, yes, I want to hear from you. I want to hear updates about your work. That list belongs to you, not to Instagram, not to Facebook, and not to any other social platform. And that's what makes it so powerful. Now, I know that building an email list can sometimes feel like one of those things that you get to later, especially when you're busy making work in the studio. But it's honestly one of the most important foundations for a sustainable art business. Even something as simple as a sign-up form on your website or a link in your Instagram bio and a short newsletter once a month is enough to begin creating consistency and can really begin to shift things. And if the whole idea of email marketing feels really overwhelming to you, you are not alone. So many artists I work with felt exactly the same when they started, but once they made the shift, the results followed. So take Jasmine, for example. When she first came to work with me, she had just 81 followers on Instagram. And within a year, she'd grown her audience, built her email list, and made 18 painting sales simply by starting to connect directly with people who genuinely wanted to hear from her. Now, the next big reason your work might not be selling is that you haven't built enough trust and connection with your audience yet. Because here's the thing, people don't just buy art because it looks nice. They buy because it makes them feel something. They feel connected to the story, to the artist behind the work, and to the meaning behind the work as well. So if you only show up when you've got something to sell, or you're only ever posting finished pieces with no context, you are missing a huge opportunity to create that emotional connection. Buying art is a high trust decision. So someone who is choosing to live with your work to hang it on a wall in their home for maybe potentially decades, that's a deeply personal choice. And in order to make their decision, they really need to get to know you a little bit first. They want to understand what the work means and what it represents. And that kind of trust doesn't happen overnight. You know, it is built slowly over time. And I've seen this play out so many times. One artist that I worked with shared a story about the inspiration behind a painting, so something that she'd never normally talk about. And the collector who actually bought the work told her afterwards that it was the story that made them choose that piece over a work by another artist. That's the power of connection. So instead of only showing that, polished final piece, let people into your world a little bit more. Talk about the inspiration behind your work. Share glimpses of a painting in progress. Open up about your values or ideas that shape your practice. These small moments allow people to feel that they're part of the journey with you. And that's when buying becomes a natural next step. Actually, I'd love to know, how often do you share the story behind your artworks? Or do you just share the finished piece? Let me know in the comments down below. Another big reason your work might not be selling is that you don't have a clear offer or a reason for someone in the moment to buy from you rather than later. A lot of artists simply put their work on their website and think, okay, it's listed. If someone likes it, they will buy it. And that's not really how selling works. People need a reason to take action in the moment. Otherwise, they will scroll past you, get distracted, and they'll tell themselves that they'll come back later. And of course, most of the time, they don't. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you have to put pressure on anyone. Not at all. What it means is that you need to create some form of structure around the way that you present your work, something that makes the decision to buy feel natural and timely. When I often see artists putting their work online with no context, no narrative, and no timeline, and when sales don't happen, they assume that it's because the work isn't good enough, so that's why, people don't want it. But it's rarely the work. It's really often about the way that the offer has been framed. Creating an offer is simply about presenting your work in a way that makes it easy and exciting for someone to say yes. This is why inside of the Artist Accelerator, we teach artists how to run launches. A launch might look like releasing a limited edition print run of prints with only a certain number of prints available, or releasing a new collection of, say, 10 works with a story that ties them all together, and giving early buyers a little bonus like a handwritten note, maybe a small print, or even access to a behind-the-scenes studio tour, or maybe giving your email list first access before anyone else sees the work. These kind of approaches create a natural sense of urgency without discounting your work or compromising your values. It's not about being manipulative. It's about helping people to understand why this moment matters, why your work is special, and why now is the best time to invest in it. Because here's the truth, people love to buy art. They just sometimes need that little nudge and a reason to do it now rather than someday in the future. Another reason why your work might not be selling is that you're not warming people up before you release new works. A lot of artists assume that the sales process starts the day they release new work. But by the time you're posting now live on my website, it's already too late. Think about how galleries do it. They don't just fling the doors open and hope that people wander in. There's a whole build-up. There's private view invitations, special previews, a teaser image and a newsletter, installation photos on Instagram, sometimes even interviews with the artist beforehand. All of that anticipation and excitement makes people want to be involved, and selling online is no different. When you skip that pre-promotional phase or the pre-launch phase, if you're running a launch, when you don't warm up your audience in the week beforehand, you're essentially asking them to care about something that they haven't even had time to think about yet. So your audience needs time to connect with your work, to see the process behind it, to understand what inspired the work, to picture the work in their own home and to check their budget, maybe talk it over with their partner, to actually decide, yes, I want to buy this. And all of that doesn't happen in a day. What really makes a difference is creating a sense of anticipation in the lead up. That might mean sharing the early stages of a piece in your stories or reels, sending sneak previews to your email list in the weeks beforehand, or telling the story behind the collection as it develops. It might even be worth reminding people several times about the release, so not just once when your new collection is released, or letting your email subscribers know exactly when and how they'll get first access. We teach an entire pre-launch strategy inside of the Artist Accelerator so that when you do decide to release a new collection of works or run a print drop, you can expect guaranteed sales. Now, this final one might sting a little, but it's worth me sharing because I've seen it so many times before. You think you have a sales strategy, but what you actually have is a series of panicked responses, and it often looks like this. So you post sporadically on Instagram, usually when you remember to post or you've got something new to show. You only email your list when you've got something to sell, and you're often apologizing for not showing up sooner. When sales feel quite slow, you throw out a discount, hoping that it's going to encourage people to buy. You call it a studio sale as well, or a one-time offer, but it's actually the fourth one that you've done this year. And you're constantly jumping from one idea to the next because nothing feels like it's really working. And look, I get it. When you're trying to make a living from your art and sales aren't happening, there can be that temptation to just do something, anything. So I get that. But here's the truth. What feels like a strategy is often just a cycle of stress and reaction. Yes, those discounts might bring in a few quick sales in the short term, but in the long term, they can do some serious damage. What you're essentially doing is you're conditioning your audience to wait. You're basically telling them, if you wait a little bit longer, I'll probably throw out another discount soon and the work is going to be cheaper at that point. And that really kills urgency. Even worse, it can massively devalue your work. It can diminish your collector's trust, and it can unconsciously affect your own confidence in yourself and your work. Because every time you let a piece go for far less than it's actually worth, you reinforce that your work isn't valuable unless it's on sale. And let's be honest, no one wants to feel like they're paying people to buy their work. So what we really want to create is a sustainable business model, one where you can bring in reliable sales, where you feel proud of your pricing, your collectors respect your boundaries, and you're no longer constantly scrambling for the next sale. That's what an intentional strategy gives you. A plan based on how trust, visibility, and sales actually work in the art world. It means mapping out your sales cycles in advance, knowing your price points, building a system for warming people up, and growing a base of collectors who truly value what you do without needing to dance on reels or offer heavy discounts every other month. You don't need to shout louder. You don't need to sell your soul. You just need a plan that you can trust and the support to stick with it. Because if what you're doing right now isn't giving you the results that you want, then it's not really strategy, it's just a habit. But the good news is that habits can be changed. If you've been watching and thinking this is exactly what I need, then I'd love to invite you to my free advanced training on the 7th of May 2026. In it, I'll walk you through the same framework I teach inside of the Artist Accelerator, and I'll show you how to create a sustainable business around your art that supports your creativity and your income. You can find the link to apply to get your invite in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, let me know by liking it, commenting down below, and subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you in my next video.